What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Today's video, I'm actually back in my hometown of Cody, Wyoming, visiting my folks. So, one of the favorite pastimes out here in Wyoming is packing up the camper or RV and heading out to the mountains for a long, relaxing weekend. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is upgrading the tired old, outdated lead-acid battery system in their 1973 Winnebago Chieftain fifth wheel to one of BigBattery's plug-and-play lithium battery kits. Alright, first things first is I got to give Eric over at BigBattery a huge shout out for hooking us up with their 12-volt Flagship power system and his team for getting it shipped out here in just a few days. You guys rock, and I can't say thanks enough. Alright, so the system that BigBattery sent out is their Flagship 170 amp hour 12-volt OWL lithium iron phosphate battery system. Normally comes with one battery, but they sent us two batteries, or a 2 times capacity system. The batteries are 2.2 kilowatt hours or 170 amp hours. Got a built-in LED voltage display, replaceable 300 amp fuse, and advanced BMS that has under voltage, over voltage, and over current protection. Voltage range is 9.8 to 14.6 volts, max continuous discharge rate of 175 amps, and a peak discharge current of 350 amps to help start those big loads. Max charge current is 175 amps. Now the inverter in this kit is a 12 volt 2000 watt low frequency pure sine Ames power inverter charger that's UL listed and ETL certified. It's got a 6,000 watt surge capacity for 20 seconds, battery priority selector, AC direct connect terminal block. It's marine coated and protected. Got a multi-stage smart charger for 70 amps for gel, AGM, lead acid, and lithium iron phosphate batteries. Got auto gen start, auto frequency, and it's got an automatic transfer switch. And of course, this kit also includes all the battery cables needed for the installs. And we also picked up some bus bars to run some 12 volt accessories and a shunt kit so we can basically keep track of all the amp hours that we use. And we just picked these up off of Amazon. Alrighty, so if we go up here into the front, we got the two old Group 27 lead acid batteries that we're going to be removing. And then if we go inside, over here underneath the seat, this is where we're going to be installing the two new batteries right here. Inverter is going to go right here, and then we're going to run all the AC and DC wires along this wall right here, and then that's going to go back to the breaker box and the 12 volt fuse box. Alright, so I'm going to do a quick rundown on how the RV is wired up, and then we're going to go over how everything's going to be wired. Alright, so starting here on the top, we have one 75 watt solar panel which kind of goes down through the ceiling and ends up down here underneath the front end of the camper. Those wires go over to a little solar charge controller slash battery minder, and then over to a rat's nest of wires to the two Group 27 batteries. From there, the wires run over to the frame, go inside the frame, and then run all the way to the back of the RV. Go up a little bit and then inside. From inside, the wires go over to the DC converter slash charger, and the positive goes to the fuse block and the negative goes to this little bus bar right here. All the 12 volt stuff powers all the lights, part of the fridge, heater, and then the water pump over underneath the other seat. The AC side, which I wasn't really aware of, is all powered from shore power or grid power or a generator. So out here you have to plug in your cable, wires run along this back wall, and then pop out into this breaker box right here. In the breaker box, power comes in, and then it powers a 30 amp circuit breaker and two 20 amp circuit breakers. You know, one's for the air conditioning and the other's for the 120 volt outlets, you know, and all that kind of stuff. So basically you have to be plugged into shore power if you want to run anything like AC, a coffee pot, a microwave, or really anything. Anyway, the new battery and inverter kit will pretty much eliminate or massively reduce hooking up to shore power or running a generator and keep you out camping for much longer. Alright, so for kind of rewiring this, since it's such an old camper, basically what we're going to be doing is removing all the 120 volt stuff from shore power minus the air conditioning. Air conditioning is still going to stay on shore power because those just draw a lot of power, you know, and you really don't want to be doing that off of batteries unless you got a huge battery. With these two batteries, I mean, you could run it for quite a while, but you know, it kind of becomes pointless after that. So anyway, what we're going to be doing is removing the 120 volt items, which is basically all the outlets throughout the camper, and we're going to be running all of that stuff on the inverter. So we're going to be coming out of this 30 amp circuit breaker over here, and that's going to be going into the inverter, and we're going to be using 10 AWG Romex wire for that. And then on the inverter output, we're going to run some 12 gauge Romex wire over to this little outlet box here, and this outlet box actually kind of parallels all the 120 volt runs throughout the rest of the camper. Now all that's going to stay the same. We might move some stuff around a little bit, but that's basically what we're going to be doing. On the DC side, we're going to remove the converter / charger over here, since we don't really need it anymore, because the new inverter's got a charger built right in. After that's removed, we're going to run some 6 gauge wire over to the fuse box and the negative bus bar, and then over to the new bus bars that we got from Amazon, and those are going to be kind of sitting over there by the batteries and inverter. Alrighty, since under here is full of old 70s shag carpet, we're pretty much going to put down some plywood so we can mount everything onto that. Alrighty, so let's get started. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do here is verify that shore power is disconnected from the RV right there. And then after that, what we're going to do is start ripping out the old lead acid battery system, batteries and all the wiring and all the wire nest and stuff up here. Alrighty, we got all the old batteries and stuff out of the way. If you can see, batteries are gone. Alrighty, sorry about the poor lighting, but it's a camper, so you know how it goes. We put down some plywood over here where the batteries and inverter are gonna go. And then over here, we also wired in the AC. Basically, we're gonna be coming out of this 30 amp circuit breaker through the 10 gauge wire, which is the orange wire. And we got it run along the side here, and that's coming out right here. The white is a 12 gauge wire, which is going to be coming out of the inverter, supplying the 120 volts. Takes the same path, goes up into this outlet right here, which will probably end up changing out to a GFCI later. And then you got a short run over into this junction box, which supplies 120 volts to the rest of the camper. Also off camera, we made up the shunt wire and bus bar connections. Basically all we did is use one of the wires that would actually connect to the inverter and cut the negative side, added some ring terminals so we could connect to the shunt, and then from the shunt we go over to the 12 volt bus bars. The 12 volt camper fuse box will also connect to these bus bars so we can still power the lights, and all that kind of stuff. And then we have a short run which goes back to the inverter. Alrighty, so one battery is going to go right here. Roughly. Keep in mind where you put the Anderson connector, so this one is going to go roughly right here. The second one is also going to go right here, but it's going to be staggered just a little bit. So we have room for that Anderson connector. Let me grab the inverter. I've also pulled off the cover panels for the inverter so it's easier access. Inverter's going to go roughly right here. So before I mount the inverter down or secure the batteries, I'm going to wire it up. The best way to do that is to set it up like this and put a block underneath there. So first thing we're going to do is that little cover plate that goes right here. We're going to run our wires through it, and this is what makes it kind of a pain in the butt. 10 gauge goes through here, which is the input, and then the 12 gauge, which is the output, goes in here. And we're going to shove this all the way back so it's out of the way. If you look right on here, there's a wiring diagram, but your AC input is this 10 gauge wire. First thing we're going to do is hook up the ground, then line, which will be black, and then neutral. And then same thing for the 12 gauge, which is the AC output. And it can be a struggle. This is probably the hardest part of putting all this stuff in. So I'm going to put a bend, I don't know, somewhere in here, like that. Put a small bend in the wire so it goes up into the terminals a little bit easier. Like so, and then right in the terminals here. Give everything a wiggle, and then tighten it down just a smidge more. Alright, same thing with this. Give it a little bend, so we'll give them all just a little bend to go up in the terminals. Alright, so here you can basically see all the wires are connected to the terminal block. All right, the next part is the struggle part, which is putting on this cover plate here. Which that didn't go too bad, actually. It should be a struggle, but I don't know, I didn't have much of a problem that time. So I'm gonna put in these 2 screws real quick. And if you remove the saddle clamp on this wire, go ahead and put that back on. And what these do is prevent the wires from being pulled out.
Do you think they use a lot of those saddle clamps here in Wyoming?
They do.
Yeah.
All right, next thing we're gonna do is set the pre-configured shunt and bus bar wires into place. And this guy is gonna go over here. Alrighty, so from here, what we're gonna do is install the battery cables. The bottom side is the negative and the top side is the positive. These are a 13 millimeter. I forgot to say a few minutes ago. For this installation, our dip switches right here are 0, 0, 0, 1, which is down, and then 0. And right over here is the charge current control, or percentage of how much you want to charge. At this current moment, we have it turned all the way down. And the battery selector on top, we have it set to number 4, which is also the lithium iron phosphate setting. We'll do negative side first, positive side on top, and then just tighten those down. You don't have to be a gorilla tighten these down, but good and tight. Good and tight. Now we can go ahead and throw on that cover plate. Alright, we're going to go ahead and tighten down these bus bars real quick. For our negative here, we're spacing it up a little bit higher, and the positive wires are going underneath here. Here I'm just going to tighten down this shunt. Over here I just have the DC side for the 12 volt DC fuse panel. Okay, just gonna set the inverter roughly where we want it, and I'm gonna go ahead and tighten those screws down. We're almost done. All we have left to do is pretty much connect the parallel cable to the batteries, and then to this guy right here, which goes over to the inverter, and we're pretty much done. We'll go ahead and do that real quick. Before you turn everything on and connect these 2 batteries in parallel, turn them on real quick and make sure the voltage is closely the same. They can be a little bit off, but the closer the better. Because if one battery's dead, one battery's full, there's going to be a lot of current transfer from one to the other. So if you do find yourself in that situation, go ahead and charge both of them up separately and then parallel them together. Go ahead and turn them off. I'm going to take the side that has the wires going into it, which is the main hub. I'm going to plug that right into this Anderson connector, and these are pretty tight, so you might have to push quite a bit. We're going to lay that right in the center here. Probably just drape these over the back side here. Next, you're going to take one Anderson connector with the letters. You're going to take that, and it's going to go towards the back and into the battery. Again, these take a little bit of force to get in. Oh, that wasn't too bad. All right, so there's battery 1 and battery 2. I think a little bit later we'll go ahead and do some cable management for these. For now, we'll just leave it all right, just like that. So don't look at those right now. All right, so we're at the point of getting ready to turn everything on. So now's a good time to check all your wiring and make sure it's correct. So basically what we have on the top here is the batteries go into the corner of the batteries, all right? And then they go into that Anderson connector, which you can barely see. From the Anderson connector, it goes into our shunt that we installed separately. Goes over to our bus bars right here, and then it goes back and into the back of the inverter. And then same thing for your AC wires right over here. Make sure all that stuff is correct and tight. Follow it back, make sure nothing is binding or anything like that. And of course, before you turn everything on, is make sure all the circuit breakers are off. All right, so we're gonna turn this on for the very first time. First thing we're gonna do is turn on both batteries, which is going to supply 12 volts to the whole 12 volt system, which is actually gonna power the 12 volt system over here in the camper, which will give us lights and all that kind of stuff. After that, we'll go ahead and turn on the inverter. Here we go. All right, so now we have the batteries on. we can go ahead and turn the inverter on, and that's just pushing the button straight up. And you can see right here we're in inverter mode, basically supplying the camper without shore power or anything like that. On the back side here, I am going to flip on the circuit breakers, which will then power the rest of the 120 volt items throughout the rest of the camper. Alright, now that the inverter's on, we're supplying 120 volt AC power to the entire camper, and all the lights and all that kind of stuff are 12 volt DC from the batteries. Oh, we also, with that shunt, sorry, I forgot to mention that before, the shunt has some wires that run all the way up to this little meter right here, which will give us the load in amps and the voltage and all that kind of stuff. So at this current moment, we're drawing 4 amps, alright, and that's pretty much just the DC load with the lights. A few other random things in the camper, the standby or the no load on the inverter, and I think that's pretty much it. So our first test is going to be running the coffee pot here. And it's working. Right up here, it's going to be really hard to see on camera, but we're drawing 75.5 amps. I don't know how well you can see that, but there you go, right up there on top. There's a small fan running here to keep everything cool. Battery voltage is 13 volts on each battery, so that is great. Everything's running great. The air conditioning is still only working on shore power, so we cannot run the air conditioning at this time. It's a really big draw on the batteries, and I don't think we have enough battery capacity for that. So we kept that on shore power like it was from the beginning. Basically all we did is removed all of the shore power for all the 120 volt outlets throughout the camper, and we're powering that with the inverter and the batteries. If we do plug into shore power, this inverter will automatically kick in pass-through mode, and it won't be powering everything off of the batteries anymore. It'll just be powering it from shore power. As soon as you disconnect from shore power, it automatically goes to, I want to call it off-grid because that's what I typically call things, but it works like a UPS as well. All right, well we're gonna try a test real quick. So we're making coffee. My dad wants to heat up his room temperature coffee, so we don't know what's actually gonna happen, so we're gonna give it a try. Microwave. So here we go. We'll see what happens. All right, there you go. So we are making coffee and we're running the microwave. Let me see the amperage real quick. We're drawing 190 amps, and that's from 2 batteries, so you split that in 2, and that's what's coming off of each battery. Do it again. We're gonna do it a little bit longer, or is that too hot for your coffee? Still, everything is running great. 191 amps. Is the refrigerator on? Now it is?
Now it is.
Now the refrigerator's on. So we could technically power the TV that's in there, or really anything else that you would want to plug in. Okay, that's what we're going to do next. We're going to plug it into shore power. The inverter will kick into... It'll go from inverter mode to AC mode. Also, once we do this, it'll start charging the batteries. So we'll plug it in right here, we'll go inside and make sure it switches over to AC power. Alright, so right in here, you'll see the inverter go from inverter mode over to AC mode, and this takes about 10 or so seconds to do that. Alright, there it goes. Went over to AC mode, and we are in fast charge mode. Alright, so now you can see up here on this meter, this is coming from the shunt. Now that we're back on shore power, we're charging at roughly 11.5 amps. And I do have the inverter charger turned all the way down. So all the way down, it's around 11 or so amps. Another thing that this is going to be great for is my mom really likes to turn on all electronics. She's over there in the corner giggling. She doesn't like to turn any of those off when they're camping. My dad typically has to run the generator, or, well, you have to run the generator, right?
Yeah, for the CPAP, or even for the coffee pot until now.
So he typically has to plug in the generator to keep a charge on the batteries, to run coffee, the air conditioning, you know, all of this stuff. He typically has to be on generator or on shore power to run all that stuff. Now he can run everything except for the air conditioning. They can run all of that stuff all night, no problem, and he shouldn't have to worry about running out of battery power. Alrighty, I think that's going to wrap it up for this video, as I think it's gone on long enough. I did want to add real quick that since our trip out to Wyoming was a little short, we actually didn't get to test out the system while I was there. However, the folks have gone out at least 4 different weekends to use the new 12-volt lithium iron phosphate owl batteries, and everything's worked out great pretty much all weekend. Even my mom has been able to leave on all the electronics all day, all night, to include the CPAP machine. Typically they would have to run the generator all night, or at least be plugged into shore power. Now they can do that stuff all day, all night, no problem. Plus, what they're telling me is in the morning time, with all the other people starting their generator, you know, to make coffee, etc., to have breakfast, start the day, all the parents have done is set the timer on the coffee pot. Boom, and done. Alright, so if anybody wants to stay up to date on how this system is going, my dad has a small YouTube channel and he said he's going to start making videos about this system. So I'll have a link to his channel down below. Be sure to check him out. If anybody else is looking to upgrade their old or new camper or RV to lithium batteries, make sure you head over to BigBattery.com and check out all the batteries that they have. If you do, you can save 10% with my discount code JOE10. It's definitely not required, but always appreciated, as I do get a small kickback for that, and that helps me create awesome videos. Once again, a quick shout out to Big Battery for hooking us up with this amazing kit. You guys rock. If anybody has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear those down below. If anybody else is looking to power your house during a blackout, I've done a couple of videos on that subject as well. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if this video was helpful, and I'll see you on the next one.